It was one of those wet afternoons when the world seemed painted in shades of gray. The heavy rain poured relentlessly outside the little roadside diner, pattering against the windows like soft whispers of discontent. Inside, the place was nearly empty. Only a few regulars sat nursing their coffee, while the murmur of a distant radio played the only other accompaniment to the constant drumbeat of the storm. At the farthest corner, a young woman named Emily balanced a tray of steaming mugs in one hand, her face set in a determined yet tired expression. Her shifts were long and tips were scarce, but she couldn't afford to complain, not with bills piling up and dreams slipping further away. Today, however, something caught her eye that made her forget her own worries for a moment. Huddled in the corner, by the window streaked with rain, sat a woman, no older than her early 30s, with two small children. Their clothes, soaked from the downpour, clung to their thin frames. The mother's eyes darted around nervously, and her hands fidgeted restlessly in her lap. But what struck Emily most were the kids' faces, round, pale, and completely fixated on the plates of food being served to others. She approached slowly, careful not to startle them. "Hi there," she began softly, bending down a little to meet the mother's eyes. "Can I get you anything?" The woman looked up, startled, her eyes wide and defensive. Then, almost as if realizing how she must appear, she forced a smile, shaking her head. Just water, thank you." Before Emily could respond, a small voice piped up from beside her. "Mommy, I'm hungry." It was the little boy, no older than 5. His sister, barely more than a toddler, simply stared with wide, pleading eyes. For a moment, Emily hesitated. She knew the owner was strict about giving anything for free, but the sight of those hungry eyes, how could she turn away? "Tell you what," she said gently, smiling down at the boy. "How about I bring something for you all to share? On me." Before the mother could protest, Emily was already gone, weaving through the tables to the kitchen, ignoring the lingering gaze of her boss as she fixed up a plate. Moments later, she returned with a tray, a steaming bowl of soup, fresh bread, and a small plate of chicken tenders. "Eat up," she said warmly, setting it in front of them. "And don't worry, today's your lucky day." The woman stared at the food, her lips trembling. "I can't," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. But Emily just shook her head, waving off the thanks. "It's really no trouble." The boy's tiny hand reached for the bread, his eyes lighting up as if he'd just been given a treasure. He tore off a piece and handed it to his sister. For the next few minutes, the family ate in silence, savoring each bite as if it were a feast. Emily watched discreetly from her station, her heart swelling with a strange mix of joy and sadness. As the rain continued to pour outside, she couldn't help but wonder, what had brought this woman here, and what would happen to them after they left? Before we dive into this fascinating story, please share a comment with the community, letting us know where you're watching from. The meal was over too soon. The children leaned back in their seats, their bellies full for the first time in who knew how long. The mother dabbed at her eyes, struggling to regain her composure. She glanced around as if expecting someone to come and drag them out for eating without paying. "Thank you," she murmured finally, looking up at Emily with a fierce intensity. "I don't know how to repay you." Emily shook her head again. "There's nothing to repay. Just take care of yourself and these little ones, okay?" But the woman was already reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper and slid it across the table. "My name is Lisa. If you ever need anything at all, please call me." Then, before Emily could respond, Lisa gathered the children, buttoned their thin jackets, and hurried out into the rain. Emily watched them go, the paper lying untouched on the table. "Who was that?" her boss demanded, appearing out of nowhere, his face flushed with irritation. "You can't just give out free food like that, Emily," she shrugged, smiling faintly. "It was just one meal. Besides, she looked like she really needed it." But even as she brushed off his complaints, her gaze lingered on the door. Something about that woman's eyes. It was like she'd been running for a long time. Shaking her head, Emily tucked the note into her apron pocket, intending to forget all about it. Little did she know, that piece of paper held the key to a future she could never have imagined. Years passed, and Emily's life went on. She worked harder than ever, saved every penny, and eventually managed to buy a small cafe of her own. It wasn't much, but it was hers, a dream come true. The cafe, nestled in a lively part of town, quickly became popular for its warm atmosphere and delicious food. But with growth came challenges. Just when business seemed to be taking off, Emily received devastating news. An unexpected debt from the previous owner threatened to close her down. She tried everything: loans, negotiating with suppliers, but nothing worked. The bank set a final deadline. If she couldn't come up with the money in 30 days, she would lose everything. Feeling defeated, she sat alone one night, staring at her accounts. The stress was suffocating. How had it all gone so wrong? It was then that she remembered the crumpled note, a promise from a woman named Lisa, long forgotten in the back of her drawer. Emily sat at her small office desk, a cluttered space crammed between the back storeroom and the kitchen. The cafe was quiet now, the last customers having left over an hour ago. Her staff had gone home, leaving her alone with nothing but the dim hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. She took a deep breath, staring at the piece of paper she had dug out, a tiny, worn slip with just a name and a phone number. Lisa Carter. She remembered the rain-soaked woman, her desperate eyes, and those small children clinging to her side. A few years had passed since that encounter, and Emily couldn't shake the memory of how lost and frightened they all seemed. Was it crazy to reach out now? She didn't even know if the number was still active, but what choice did she have? With trembling hands, she dialed the number. Each ring felt like an eternity. Finally, just as she was about to hang up, a voice answered. "Hello?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. Hi, is this Lisa Carter?" There was a long pause. "Yes, this is Lisa. Who's calling?" "It's Emily. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I met you a few years ago at a diner. I was the waitress. You were there with your kids." Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God, Emily? Emily, the one who..." Lisa's voice was suddenly animated, breathless. "I can't believe it's you. I've thought about you so many times. How are you?" Well, it's a long story," Emily replied slowly, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I don't want to bother you, but you told me once that if I ever needed anything..." Yes, I remember. "Of course, Emily, what's going on? Is everything okay?" Emily swallowed hard, blinking back tears of frustration and exhaustion. "No, actually it's not. My cafe, I'm about to lose it. I didn't know where else to turn." For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then Lisa's voice came back, calm and firm. "Where are you? I want to see you. Right now." 20 minutes later, Emily sat nervously at one of the tables in her darkened cafe. The place felt eerie without its usual warmth, the shadows of empty chairs looming around her. She glanced up anxiously every time headlights passed by the front window. Would Lisa really come? What if she didn't remember? Or worse, what if she'd moved on and didn't care? Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled softly. Emily's heart skipped a beat. There, framed in the doorway, stood a woman, tall, composed, and dressed in a tailored suit that seemed worlds away from the bedraggled figure Emily had met years ago. "Emily?" Lisa stepped inside, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's really you." Emily stood slowly, staring in shock. "Lisa, you look different," Lisa finished, smiling softly. "A lot has changed since that day, but I never forgot you." They stood there, awkward and emotional, before Lisa suddenly crossed the room and enveloped Emily in a tight hug. "I can't believe this," she murmured, stepping back and holding Emily at arm's length. "Look at you, owning your own place. But what happened? You said you're in trouble?" Emily nodded, her throat tightening. "I tried to expand too fast, and there were some hidden debts from the previous owner. I don't have the money to cover it. The bank is giving me 1 more month, and then I lose everything." For a long moment, Lisa was silent, her gaze distant and thoughtful. "How much do you need?" 50,000, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. It's impossible. I shouldn't have called. I'm sorry. Don't apologize," Lisa cut in sharply. "Emily, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here. Do you know what you did for me that day?" Emily shook her head, confused. "I just gave you a meal, that's all." "No, it was more than that," Lisa insisted, her eyes misting over. "You gave me hope. That night, I was ready to give up completely. I had no money, no job, and I'd left an abusive relationship with nothing but the clothes on our backs. I thought there was no way out, but you looked at me like I was a person. You fed my kids. You made me believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still some good left in the world. Tears filled Emily's eyes, and she couldn't look away from Lisa's earnest face. But I didn't do anything special. Yes, you did, Lisa whispered fiercely. You changed everything. After that, I found a women's shelter. I got help. They connected me with a job program, and little by little, I started rebuilding my life. I started my own business, and now I'm in a position to help people too. Emily was stunned. I can't believe it. You've done all that? Lisa smiled warmly. And now, it's my turn to repay you. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a sleek checkbook. I'm going to cover your debt, Emily. And not just that, I want to help you grow. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to pay it forward. Emily stared in disbelief as Lisa quickly scribbled out a check and handed it over. No, I can't accept this, she stammered. It's too much. It's not nearly enough, Lisa replied firmly. You saved me and my kids, Emily. You gave us a chance when no one else would. This is the least I can do. But Emily shook her head, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll let me help, Lisa said softly. Let's turn this cafe into something amazing. We can open new locations, start fresh. You deserve it. Emily hesitated, her mind spinning. Could she really accept this? Was it fair? But then she thought of her staff, the customers who depended on this place, and the idea of giving up, of losing everything she'd worked so hard to build. Slowly, she looked up, meeting Lisa's steady gaze. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay, let's do it. The two women smiled, tears of relief and joy mingling in their eyes. Neither knew exactly where this new journey would take them, but one thing was certain. Sometimes, a single act of kindness really could change the course of an entire lifetime.
Hey there, quick message. Grab a paper, write down HeroKind Stories, our channel name. Come back soon, we've got incredible stories you won't want to miss.
Months passed, and Emily's cafe became more than just a cozy corner spot. It turned into a bustling neighborhood favorite, known for its warm service and delicious menu. Lisa kept her word, investing time, money, and resources to help expand the business. They worked tirelessly, transforming Emily's dream into a growing chain of successful cafes. But with growth came new pressures, business meetings, negotiations, and the inevitable conflicts that arise when ambitions run high. One evening, the two women sat in a sleek conference room in the heart of the city. Emily glanced around at the polished glass walls and the large table that seemed out of place compared to her humble cafe's quaint charm. Lisa, on the other hand, looked perfectly at ease in her tailored suit, commanding the attention of everyone in the room as she outlined their next steps. So, we've got an offer from a major investor, Lisa announced, flipping through a stack of documents. They're willing to put in $2 million for a 20% share in our brand. This could be the breakthrough we need. Emily stiffened. A 20% share? Lisa, that's a huge piece of our company. Yes, but we're expanding fast. We need the capital to support the growth, Lisa replied calmly. With their backing, we can open in 5 more locations by the end of next year. But that means giving up control, Emily argued, her voice tightening. I don't want to become just another franchise. I want to keep the personal touch. You know, the reason people come to us in the first place. Lisa's expression softened, but her eyes remained sharp. Emily, I understand, but this is how businesses grow. If we don't take risks, we'll get swallowed up by the competition. The tension in the room was palpable. Emily's heart raced. She had fought so hard to build something special, and now it felt like she was losing it. But was it fair to hold back when Lisa had given so much? We need to think about it, Emily murmured finally, looking away. I'm not saying no, but I just need time. After the meeting, Lisa caught up with Emily outside the building. Emily, wait, she called, her voice tight with concern. What's really bothering you? Emily turned, struggling to keep her emotions in check. I'm just scared, Lisa. I don't want to become like every other business out there. I thought we were building something meaningful, something different. We are building something meaningful, Lisa insisted. But we have to be smart about it. You don't want to lose everything again, do you? The words hit Emily like a slap. She recoiled, eyes widening. What's that supposed to mean? Lisa sighed, rubbing her forehead in frustration. "I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I don't want to see you lose everything after all the sacrifices we've made." Emily's shoulders slumped, her resistance crumbling under the weight of exhaustion and doubt. "Maybe you're right," she whispered, "but I just need time to process." Lisa nodded slowly, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "Take all the time you need. Just don't shut me out, okay? We're in this together." That night, Emily stayed late at the cafe, staring blankly at the reports spread out in front of her. The numbers blurred together as memories of the past few months washed over her, the excitement, the triumphs, and now, this unsettling fear that she was losing control. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the door open until a familiar voice broke the silence. "Emily?" She looked up, startled. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, with a slightly graying beard and a gentle smile. It took her a moment to place him, and when she did, her breath caught. "Mr. Johnson?" she gasped. What are you doing here?" Mr. Johnson had been a regular at her cafe in the early days, a retired teacher who often spent hours reading in the corner booth. But she hadn't seen him in over a year. "I heard about what's been going on," he said softly, stepping inside. "Thought I'd come by and see how you were doing." Emily's throat tightened. It's been tough," she admitted quietly. "I thought I was building something special. Now I'm not sure if I'm making the right choices." The old man nodded thoughtfully, pulling up a chair. "You know, I've watched you since you first opened this place. You have something unique here, Emily, a heart. But the world is a big, tough place. Sometimes you have to make decisions that seem wrong just to keep the good alive." "What do you mean?" Emily asked, frowning. "I mean," he said gently, "that sometimes holding on too tight is just another way of letting go. Trust your instincts, but don't be afraid to change if it means keeping the heart of what you've built alive." The next morning, Emily walked into Lisa's office, her shoulders squared with determination. "I'm ready to talk," she announced. Lisa looked up, her eyes guarded. "Okay, so what's your decision?" "I'm willing to accept the investment," Emily said slowly, "but only if we make a promise. No matter how big we get, we don't lose what makes us special. We keep it personal. We stay true to what we started." A long silence stretched between them. Then, to Emily's surprise, Lisa's face broke into a wide, relieved smile. "I couldn't agree more." "What?" Emily blinked, stunned. "I was worried you'd say no and walk away," Lisa confessed. "But I wanted this too. I was just pushing so hard because I didn't want us to fail. But if we're going to do this, we'll do it your way." Emily let out a shaky laugh, the tension melting away. "You have no idea how relieved I am to hear that." They hugged, the bond between them stronger than ever. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. Together, they would find a way to make their dream a reality, without sacrificing the soul of what they had built. 3 months later, Emily and Lisa stood outside a brand new cafe, sleek, modern, yet somehow still warm and welcoming. It was the first of their new locations, and as they watched the crowds pour in, Emily felt a swell of pride. "We did it," she whispered, turning to Lisa. "Yes, we did," Lisa agreed, smiling, "and it's just the beginning." But just as they were about to go inside, a small voice called out from the crowd. "Excuse me, are you the owner?" Emily turned and saw a young woman standing there, clutching a small child's hand. The woman's eyes were wide with hope and desperation. I don't have money, but my daughter hasn't eaten all day. Could I maybe get some water?" Emily felt her heart squeeze. Without a word, she knelt down beside the child, smiling gently. "How about something a little better than water?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "But I can't." "It's okay," Emily murmured, glancing up at Lisa, who nodded silently. "Today's your lucky day." As they led the little family inside, Emily felt a warm, familiar sensation in her chest, a reminder of why she'd started all of this in the first place. Because sometimes, even the smallest act of kindness could change everything. The new cafe was buzzing with life, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the chatter of happy customers. It had only been a few months since the grand opening, but Emily could already see the magic happening. People weren't just coming for food, they were coming for the atmosphere, for the feeling of home. And despite the larger scale, she knew they hadn't lost what made them special. Every detail, from the welcoming decor to the handwritten specials board, echoed the warmth of her very first cafe. Lisa stood beside her, watching as Emily moved through the cafe with her usual grace, stopping to chat with customers, greeting the regulars by name, and ensuring every dish was served with a smile. She couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and gratitude. "Emily," she said quietly as the younger woman approached, her face flushed with the joy of a busy but successful day. "I want to show you something." Emily looked at her quizzically, following Lisa to a small, newly added corner of the cafe. There, hanging on the wall, was a framed photograph, a black and white picture of Emily from years ago, carrying a tray of steaming food to a woman and two small children. The caption read, "One act of kindness can change a life." Her breath caught. "Lisa, what?" Lisa's eyes were soft as she smiled. "That's the day you saved us. I wanted to make sure everyone who comes through these doors knows where it all began." Emily felt tears pricking her eyes. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," Lisa murmured, "because without that day, there would be no us, no cafes, no success story, just a woman and her kids struggling to survive." Just as Emily was about to respond, the bell above the door tinkled, signaling a new arrival. She turned automatically, her hostess' smile in place, until she saw who it was. Standing in the doorway was a familiar face, older, frailer, but still unmistakably Mr. Johnson. He looked around, his eyes bright with curiosity and pride. "Well, I'll be," he muttered softly. "Look at this place." Emily practically ran across the room, throwing her arms around him. "Mr. Johnson, I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with joy. "I just had to come see what my favorite cafe has turned into," he said with a chuckle, patting her arm. "Looks like you've done pretty well for yourself, young lady." "Thanks to you," Emily murmured, pulling back to look at him fondly. "You were right, about trusting myself, about not holding on too tightly." "I always knew you had it in you," Mr. Johnson replied gently, "and I couldn't be prouder." The day flew by, and as the last customer left and the cafe doors were locked for the night, Emily and Lisa stood together in the quiet stillness, surveying their creation. A soft glow from the streetlights outside bathed the room in a warm, comforting light. "I never imagined we'd get here," Emily whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "And now it's all so real." "Because you didn't give up," Lisa said simply. "You believed, even when things were tough." Emily shook her head, laughing softly. "No, it's because we didn't give up. You pushed me when I needed it, and She paused, glancing at Lisa thoughtfully. "Lisa, there's something I want to ask." Lisa raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a curious smile. "What is it?" Emily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "How would you feel about making our partnership official? I mean, more than just on paper." Lisa's eyes widened. "You mean?" "I want to name the cafes after us," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. "Emily and Lisa's Cafe, a reminder that it's not just my story, it's our story." For a long moment, Lisa just stared at her, speechless. Then slowly, her eyes filled with tears. "You have no idea how much that means to me." "Is that a yes?" Emily teased, though her voice was thick with emotion. "Yes," Lisa whispered fiercely, pulling her into a tight hug. 1,000 times yes. Over the next year, Emily and Lisa's Cafe became a beloved name, with new locations opening all over the state. Each cafe carried the same spirit and warmth as the original, thanks to Emily's dedication to keeping the personal touch intact. But the heart of the story was always in that first cafe, where it all began. One sunny afternoon, Emily stood behind the counter of the original location, now bustling with life. She was watching a family, an exhausted mother and her 2 young children, settle into a booth near the window. Something about the scene sent a wave of déjà vu washing over her. "Can I get you anything?" she asked softly, just as she had all those years ago. The woman looked up, her eyes shadowed with fatigue. "Just water, thank you." Emily's heart squeezed. "I'll bring you something better," she said gently, smiling at the children's wide, hungry eyes. "Today's your lucky day." The mother's eyes filled with confusion and gratitude. "But I don't have—" "It's okay," Emily interrupted softly. "You don't have to have anything." As she walked away to prepare a warm meal, Emily glanced up at the framed photograph hanging on the wall, a reminder of how one small act of kindness had set so many lives in motion. It was a circle that had finally come back around. That evening, Emily and Lisa sat together at one of the booths, sipping coffee as the last of the staff finished closing up. The cafe was quiet, peaceful. Lisa leaned back, gazing at the photograph thoughtfully. "Do you ever wonder where that family is now?" she asked softly. Emily smiled, shaking her head. "I don't have to, because I see them in every person who walks through these doors. Every struggling mom, every lost child, every person just looking for a little bit of hope." Lisa's eyes glistened. "You're right." They sat there for a moment, basking in the warmth of their shared success. Then Emily turned, her eyes bright. "What do you say, partner? Ready to take on the next chapter?" Lisa laughed softly, lifting her cup in a mock toast. "I'm right beside you, partner. Let's change some more lives." If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. And don't forget to watch the next video that's appearing on your screen right now. It's another amazing story that will remind you just how powerful kindness can be. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.